Everybody, this is Bill Owen. This is only podcast number 2. We started the other day talking about old-time radio programs, and that's an endless subject. You can go on and on. We talked about the Lone Ranger and Jack Benny and The Shadow, of course, many others. In fact, of all the programs from the old days, a lot of young people, of course, are not aware of many of the shows, but everybody seems to remember or have heard about the Lone Ranger or the Shadow, those two. But we'll be talking more about other radio programs. We talked about Jack Benny, Bob Hope. We could have talked about Red Skelton, and some of the more obscure ones, obscure comedians like Joe Penner or Al Pierce and his gang. Al Pierce played that salesman Elmer Blurt, and he used to knock on a door. He was a shy salesman. He'd say, "Nobody home, I hope, I hope, I hope." It's kind of a contradiction to be a shy salesman. But we'll be doing a lot more old-time radio. Today I thought we'd talk about Hollywood and some of the great movie actors and actresses of that era. And I was asking somebody the other day about the cowboys of movies and television, and which ones are the most famous. And what would you say? Everybody has an opinion. There's no right and wrong. Well, who is the greatest of all the old movie cowboys? Well, you could have quite an argument over that. I think it would boil down to 2 or 3. Maybe you would say the Lone Ranger, but I would put Hopalong Cassidy at the top of the list. He had such a profound effect on youngsters growing up in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. He set a standard for Westerns. He'd make a strong case for his being number one, but then you could also argue about the Lone Ranger, what an effect he had on young radio audiences beginning back in 1933. They were both so successful in merchandising things, from lunchboxes to clothing. Hoppy, by the way, was played by just one actor in all 66 films. I think I saw all 66. I'd go Saturday afternoon to the Bijou, and my mother would give me 16 cents, 11 cents for the ticket, 5 cents for candy caramels. Sit there, and they would last sometimes through the double feature. William Boyd. He had been a silent film actor. He was not in the best of times when casting came along for Hopalong Cassidy, and he was supposed to be a villain. That was what the part he was trying out for, but he convinced the producers, let him try out for the lead. And it worked. He had a great voice, one of the great voices of Hollywood. And the character, Hoppy, always wore a black hat to match his dark clothing. That was unusual, because early on the bad guys wore the black hats and the good guys wore the white hats. But he also was in comic strips and on radio, just like the Lone Ranger. He started out in 1935. And Hoppy was a different kind of character early on. He was just a tough, crude cowboy. And a lot of cursing and so on. But as on the movie version, Hoppy was quite different. He was really a clean-cut character. He didn't hobble along with a limp as the original Hoppy did in the books and so on. He was shot in the leg supposedly and always had that little limp. Consequently, he was Hopalong. Anyway, Boyd bought the rights to his own movies, and when television came along, they were looking for Phil, literally, and boy, that satisfied the appetite for Western. So he made quite a fortune by selling his rights to the movies of Hopalong to television. Well, there were a lot of other Western stars, of course. Tom Mix was my older brother's favorite cowboy. Tom Mix with the Ralston Straight Shooters. Oh yeah, he was wonderful. My own favorite early on was Gene Autry, the first of the major singing cowboys. And what was his horse's name? Everybody knows Lone Ranger's horse was Silver. And what was Hopalong Cassidy's horse? Let's see. Yeah, Hopalong Cassidy's horse, Topper. Oh, he was wonderful. My brother Jack always liked Hopalong Cassidy. He also liked Buck Jones, who also happened to have a horse named Silver. Buck Jones died as quite a hero, helping people during that horrible fire in Boston, the Coconut Grove. You don't think of a cowboy being at a nightclub in Boston, but that's where he was on that fateful night. Roy Rogers, everybody seems to know Trigger, a great horse. And Johnny Mack Brown, another of the great cowboys. He was a sensational football star at the University of Alabama. He was a star in one of the Rose Bowl games for Alabama and went on to a fabulous movie career. One of my favorites was Hoot Gibson, kind of obscure, right? And Ken Maynard. I guess the earliest of the famous cowboys was William S. Hart. Oh, there were a bunch of others. There was Dick Foran, there was Wild Bill Hickok, there was Rex Allen, Tim McCoy. Herb Jeffries, the great black singer, was also a great star in westerns. And they had what they did, segregated theaters in those days. And Herb Jeffries was frequently the featured star in a western in those theaters. Well, there were a lot of great people out in Hollywood. And how about the King? Well, of course, young people would say the King. Oh, that was Elvis Presley. But long before Elvis came along, Clark Gable was known as the King of Hollywood. He made so many movies, a couple every year, at a tremendous rate, and all good, top quality A movies. So I guess if you were making a list of the top movie actors of all time, my tendency would put Clark Gable at the top. I've got so many other favorites. Cary Grant, what a wonderful, versatile actor. He could play anything. Super sophisticated. My favorite line, I think it was the movie Charade with Audrey Hepburn, and he's saying goodnight to her, and Audrey says to him, "You know what's wrong with you?" And he says, "What?" "Nothing," she says. I thought that was just great. Who remembers Spencer Tracy? All those movies, all the movies he made with Katharine Hepburn, his real life amour, inamorata. There was Edward G. Robinson, one of the greatest character actors of all time. Frederick March, kind of forgotten today by audiences, but in his prime, he was one of the greats. Paul Muni, another who's kind of been forgotten, and Robert Donat, the original Mr. Chips in Goodbye, Mr. Chips. I think James Stewart is well remembered today, as is Orson Welles and perhaps Charles Laughton. Oh, just think of all the great stars. Laurence Olivier, Claude Rains, Wallace Beery, Tyrone Power, James Cagney, Ronald Reagan, can't forget he was a major star. Errol Flynn, Marlon Brando, Humphrey Bogart, John Wayne. I think everybody admired John Wayne in those days. Randolph Scott, Clint Eastwood, Don Amici, James Mason, Peter O'Toole. How about the Barrymore family? John, Lionel, Ethel, Ray Milland, Walter Pidgeon, George Raft, Henry Fonda. Each one of those kind of conjures up an image of a career, doesn't it? Alan Ladd, William Powell, and the other Powell, Dick Powell, no relation, of course. And as you know, there was an Eleanor Powell, a great dancer. Oh, we remember Van Johnson, Van Heflin, the two Vans, Fred McMurray, Burgess Meredith, Lon Chaney, and Lon Chaney Jr. Lon Chaney, the man of 1,000 faces in the silence. And along came Lon Chaney Jr., his son. And at one point, he was believed to have been in more movies than any other actor. He was in so many westerns, but he was in horror films. He was a constant appearance on the screen. Paul Henreid, Ward Bond, Dennis Morgan. Isn't it amazing when you start listing them how many there were? your tendency to say, well, I can name the top actors, but the list goes on and on. It's endless. One of my favorites was Robert Taylor, Nelson Eddy, the King of Corn, some people would say, but a tremendous performer. He was often on Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy's program as a baritone. John Gilbert, one of the original leading men of Hollywood. Basil Rathbone, oh, you know what role he owned. He owned that role of Sherlock Holmes. Nobody has ever come close to playing it as well as he did. Another probably underrated actor of that era is Edward Arnold. He played leads and character actors. There was Walter Huston, Maurice Chevalier. Oh, some of the younger ones like James Dean, Michael Caine, Tony Randall, Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Anthony Hopkins, John Voight. How about going back in time again to Raymond Massey or Robert Mitchum or Charlton Heston? Oh, so many wonderful, wonderful movie actors, and we can't overlook the great movie actresses of that era. Now, who is the most important or best known or greatest, any way you want to phrase it, of the movie actresses? Well, I have a nomination. Her name is Katharine Hepburn, and she had 12 nominations as Best Actress. Think of that, 12 of them, and 4 of them brought her an Oscar. She won an Oscar in 1933 for Morning Glory, for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in 1967, The Lion in Winter in 1968, and in 1981 on Golden Pond, starring with Henry Fonda. Well, you got to bring Bette Davis in close. A lot of people didn't appreciate her, but few would deny that she was a great, great actress, and she almost got the role as Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, but the fact that earlier she had played Jezebel, the character, the title actress, and that it was somewhat similar to Gone with the Wind, so that took her out of the running. But she came very close, as did Susan Hayward, to being Scarlett O'Hara. There was Claudette Colbert, there was Louise Reiner, I believe you'd pronounce it, Austrian actress. There was Greer Garson, the Irish actress. Vivien Leigh, we just referred to her as Scarlett O'Hara. The sisters, Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland. Ingrid Bergman, Barbara Stanwyck, Deborah Carr, Ann Sothern. Isn't it wonderful, the memories that we have, each one, again, conjuring up a beautiful image on screen. Who was America's Sweetheart? Remember that one? Mary Pickford. It was interesting, because Mary was a wonderful actress, starting as a child and continuing. She played childlike roles even as she grew up. But she was deathly afraid of microphones when she was first on radio. And so NBC had a special microphone they designed for her so to quell her nerves and fear of being on radio. It was disguised as a lamp. And once they put that in front of her, she was able to perform. Oh, the It Girl, remember the It Girl, Clara Bow? Oh, there was Carol Landis, who died tragically so young in her 20s. Gloria Swanson, Marlene Dietrich. But I'll stick with Katharine Hepburn, perhaps, as the greatest of all the old movie actresses. Well, here we've done a little more reminiscing and went from radio to movies, and who knows where we'll go next time. This is Bill Owen signing off, podcast number 2. Okay, that was kind of fun.
Well, let's see if you got it. It was fun. Oops.